You are listening to the sounds of the Right On Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 40 of On the Record Jams, brought to you by the Right On Network. I'm AJ.
I'm Arthur.
And before we get started, I just want to take time out to thank our Patreon subscribers. They've been helping us go and grow in the year 2026 and beyond. And before that, and that's Alan Wright, Delvin Sims, DJ Merc Bandwidth. Go on any music platform and get his album Boycott Sal's. That is DJ Merc Bandwidth, Boycott Sal's. Tim Price, Cluck Trent, Kim Fredikowski, Mark Blair, Paul Hicks, Laurel Phillips, The Irredeemable Shag, Justin Steiner, Rick, Chris Pine 1, Bill Beer, April 5K, Jordan Holt, and Clinton Robeson. We want to thank you guys for going to patreon.com/rightonnetwork. We'll put that link in the show notes. Now, Arthur, this is episode 40. Wow, we've been doing it for this long. This feels good, and I feel like this is a celebratory thing, and I feel like we are putting on the record a band where they do a lot of celebratory things as well. Who are we bringing this time, Arthur?
All right, so as we went into this series of songs talking about coping and sadness and how to deal with things not going your way, so I think it's only right that eventually we come up with a band that was also trying to do that. So we're going to go to 1975. We're going to Earth, Wind, and Fire. No Water, for whatever reason he left water out. And we're going to do That's the Way of the World.
Ooh, man, what a record. I mean, this is the definition of what we're talking about. This is a true sense of, wow, this is a great record, meaning we caught a recording and we're able to crystallize it, and now it'll be listened to people forever, this recording, this record. Wow.
Yeah, very much so. You think this is now, as we age, you see those years. We're now talking about a 50-year-old song. We talk about this being maybe their first major hit, breakthrough album. So 1975, this is their sixth album. I know we talk about that a lot, how groups sometimes got a lot more time to cook than maybe groups now, where if you make it to 4 or 5 albums and you haven't hit yet, you might not still be making music, right? Or you may be having to make music with a lot less visibility and opportunity. But, you know, with such a band, I mean, they changed lineups. And this was their 9-man configuration that they made several albums with. They also had advisors and engineers and people to really try to bring their sound to light. So this is this is the same album that has Shining Star on it. So Shining Star was the breakthrough record, and That's the Way of the World was the Let's Slow It Down ballad of the album that went over really big.
Now this is being played in grocery stores.
Yeah, you go to Walgreens or CVS or whatever, and it's on there and it's in there. And like we were talking about before we hit record, like growing up, this was in the walls, man. This was getting played all the time. This record, maybe half a dozen Earth, Wind, and Fire records. And then once I got to adult age and streaming and downloading became a thing, and I was able to go back and get my ears wrapped around some of the records, I gained a even bigger appreciation for what they were doing, understood some of the sneakiness of what they were doing, and really started understanding them more as a band. And then even better, because like you and I and Kevin always talk about, like, we're eating so good now as people of our age and our scope of reference. Now, of course, they have an Earth, Wind, and Fire documentary that you can feast your eyes and ears upon and get more of their backstory, understanding more about Maurice White's upbringing and how it helped shape their sound. And it's very interesting to me to think about how optimistic Earth, Wind, and Fire's music generally is. But then when you understand his story and now listening to these lyrics with more adult ears, it's almost more like a defiant optimism, which is different than just, everything is great, don't worry about it stuff. It's like, no, things aren't always great, but that's not enough of a reason for you to not do the best you can do, for you to not figure out what you need to do to, as they've said on other songs, put some beauty in the world, like make things better around you and do the best you can. So it seems like Earth, Wind, and Fire, one of their mantras and what they wanted to do was exactly that through their music, bringing people together. So then now when you put all that together, these records, as the kids say, they hit different. Not to say they didn't hit when we were coming up, but they really hit a certain way now. I don't know if you feel that way, but I know that's what I got, man. When you hear these type of records and some of the records I put you on to listen to, what do you think zoomed out about Earth, Wind, and Fire?
That is a good question. I think when I was deep diving into Earth, Wind, and Fire, I watched the documentary on HBO to help me timeline this thing. I went back and I listened to the first 3 albums, and then I listened to like a bunch of the hits and things in their later work, later in the decade. And full disclosure, what I realized was with Earth, Wind, and Fire, over all these years, I was conflating them with everybody. Gladys Knight and the Pips, Ohio Players, Atlantic Star. I didn't know what was what. So like I knew these songs, but I didn't know, and that's Earth, Wind, and Fire. I think I knew September was Earth, Wind, and Fire. But like everything else, and Shining Star, I knew that was Earth, Wind, and Fire. But all the other songs where I'm like, wait a minute, no, I know this song. I know that song, I know that song. I have been conflating Earth, Wind, and Fire with, I thought like Earth, Wind, and Fire, the main people were 2 men and a woman. So I was like, whoa, I'm totally off. So this journey is fun, and like the whole thing with, we're talking about The Way of the World, and this is on an album that's a soundtrack that this band was featured in. My mind was blown about that. This came out in 1975. Man, there's a lot of revolutionary stuff and like changing of the guard. We're about to get Saturday Night Live, and like Saturday Night Live at the time, that was revolutionary because before them, everything was kind of like variety show. We've seen that where you're going back and you're watching the Jacksons perform on these shows where like, hey, before the Jacksons, somebody was juggling. When the Jacksons finish performing, if the show's not over, someone's going to do magic. Like it's all this different stuff. And then when Saturday Night Live came out, they kind of ended that. So Arthur, someone like me where I wasn't as educated, where I'm like, wait a minute, I was conflating Earth, Wind, and Fire with all of these bands. Also something you were talking about, like with the optimism, like having the audacity to have hope, having the audacity to be optimistic. You're saying that it hits differently now because like, hey, telling a kid like, hey, you're worth it, have self-esteem and you matter. That's things we're saying all the time, and it's not really like a revolutionary thought to tell a kid that or an adult that. Now, maybe they might blow it off and going, you're being hokey, but like it wouldn't be like, wait a minute, I can think highly of myself. Where back then, with the late 60s, early 70s, you got James Brown with I'm Black and I'm Proud. Now we're having like black products being sold in stores. And then with this, hey, you are a shining star. Hey, you can have optimism. You're about to get Norman Lear where he's like, hey, all right, we got the Jeffersons and they're living in a high-rise apartment on the east side. That itself, just that as a concept, that was Space Invaders of the Third Kind. That was like, whoa, that's science fiction. What are you doing with this? So you're getting all this in this time period. And I just thank goodness that this took. Think about how much great music now where it doesn't take. I'm grateful that, man, the 70s, I'm telling you guys, when I was growing up and I was watching Nick at Night and all this stuff, I was really romanticizing the 50s and the 60s. But over time, as I've gotten older, like movies, music, all this stuff, fashion, comedy, the whole nine, man, the 70s. Because the 70s, like, we allowed this band to cook. You just said with this album, this is their sixth album, where I listened to the first three albums. They jammed. They were great. Easy to listen to. So now, hey, we got a chance to mature. We get the studio, so we know what we can do. But how revolutionary, if you can explain this, like, what is it about them that was different from other groups with like 6 to 8 people and things like that?
Well, okay. So you think they hit in 1975. They start in 1970. And so we've talked a lot about the 60s and the coming out of the doo-wop era and going more into the Motown era of R&B, pop R&B music. And you had your 4 and 5 person singing groups, not necessarily full-on bands. And so the 70s come in and you get the bands. You get a little bit more advanced studios where people can do more things. You could do more tracks. You can do more layering. You can do punch-ins, which was unheard of before that. Like if you mess up, you had to do the whole thing in. Now you could punch in a vocal, place a vocal where you didn't do it during the original take, like that type of stuff. And we talked about on a previous episode, like Marvin Gaye got to doing that so much that the studio people would make fun of him. Because even if you could do a punch in, it was still a lot of work for the studio guys. Like you're talking cutting tape and all that type of stuff. And they're like, dude, it'd be awesome if you could just sing this doggone song on the first take like you used to do 3 years ago before you realized that you didn't have to. But in addition to that, the post riots, post segregation, you're getting to the point where you're after wars, you're after assassinations, and people don't know how to treat these things. And you're getting some level of rebellion. Early 70s, you got Marvin Gaye saying what's going on. You got Curtis Mayfield doing the same thing. So, and Slide and Family Stone, they're there, right? This is early 70s. So rebellion and different topics within the R&B space was not a new thing. But when you put in Earth, Wind, and Fire, it's like, okay, they got the funk, but they also have the world music type thing. So they have Brazilian and Latin and other things. And you can tell, we talked about this before, it's like they have a certain amount of spirituality to their music, but it's not something that you could easily throw in the bucket and just say, oh, this is religious music. This is Baptist church music. Like, nope. That's got to go on the Baptist church music channel because, the next song might not be in that range at all. So the big difference with them is I felt like they had more of their niche was that they had a range. So the topics would change, the music would change, the percussion would be different. I mean, it's interesting that this group had multiple drummers and they had so much nuance and weirdness to their percussion and how all their music got together. And also, too, from a racial standpoint, their music was viewed as oddly advanced for an act like them, even though we still had P-Funk and Parliament in this time. This was also after the beginnings of Ohio Players, but it was kind of like a mix of those things plus the world music piece, plus this concept of, hey, we're not going to make like one album that's about the world or optimism or keep your head up, y'all, or whatever. It's like, no, this is a mantra of what we are. And we might not do it every single song because we're going to get our love songs in and we're going to talk about our just going on to the club and boogie stuff. Like they got all of that too. But just the way they approached their message songs, you didn't know what the tempo was going to be. Like you had to hear the song And even when the music started, you didn't know who was going to start singing, and you didn't know what they were going to start singing about. So they were very multiple in that way.
Yeah, that's something that's interesting about them too, as far as, and I like that where, we talked about this. We like groups where they have multiple singers, and they have multiple lead singers plus backing vocals, and you don't know from song to song what angle they're going to approach you this time. So just imagine on this album, you have Shining Star, and then you have this, what we're talking about. Uh, yeah, something else that they're showing too is other musicians and artists that's listening to these records. It's all about like, hey, how did they get that sound? So when they're in the studio, how did they do that? If I could work with them, they like, how did you achieve that sound? Like, where did you put the mics? How did you do that? And now, you get Maurice producing for other people, just with this knowledge of everything that they know.
Yeah, for sure. And you think they also had like their sensei, like they had Charles Stepney before he passed away, and he was helping as well. The way they used their engineers in a real way, because they know they were trying to elevate the music. They knew they had a full band and they wanted it to sound that way, which is a risk, right? Because you can start getting messy, right? You get to the point where you want to have too much stuff happening on a song, and you need that engineer to clean you up and get you right so that you don't literally like muddy your own waters, in the sense of trying to get all the music into that same space. And, we've talked about that before too, with the 70s, the idea of saying, okay, you also have the media that the music is sold on is giving you more room to work. So you're not just dealing with the 3-minute song. You can now get greedy, as we call it, and do a 6-minute song or a 5-minute song or an 8-minute song. Or you can have one song be 13, 15 minutes if you want to, because it's your world, baby. You could do what you want to do. And that was another way that bands would try to flex their muscle to say, hey, we can keep this groove going for as long as we want because we have that much talent. But how do you do that and break through, right? Because that's what Earth, Wind, and Fire was kind of struggling with. They're trying to give the messages. They're trying to be funky. And then once they changed over from multiple lead singers into more of a 2-man lead singer thing, once they added Philip Bailey is also gospel trained, so not a shock there. And he's got the high falsetto that he's singing in, 90% of the time. And then you got Maurice sounding like, I talk about this, sounding like your cool uncle that come over to the house with random slogans and telling you how you got to be cool. And you mix those two things together, and it's just this weird mix that, like you say, it's very fortunate that this worked out for as long as it did, because people could have just labeled these guys as weird and said, no, we're out. We're not paying attention to this. These aren't normal drums. What's up with these horns? There's too many instruments going on here. I don't know who's going to be singing. You see them, they're kind of cool, but they're kind of not cool too, because you got Maurice with the weird afro that's not an afro, and then Verdine has got he's got too much hair. Maurice doesn't have enough hair. So for some reason, Philip Bailey has on a headband. I don't know what's going on. And these guys come out here and start jumping around, and then they start trying to inspire you. And or depending on how kids look at it now, they would say, oh man, these guys are preaching, right? Oh, these guys are preaching to me, trying to tell me how I ought to feel good. I don't want to feel good. I want to be sad. And it's like, no, you don't get to be sad because Earth, Wind, and Fire is jamming too hard. They gonna tell you to, yeah, it's stuff to be sad about, and that's cool, but you need to come out of this at some point, and you need to work yourself out of this. And it's got to be you. You got to look inside yourself and figure something out, and let's enjoy this thing, because this is it. This is us. So they're really interesting from that standpoint of what they were attempting to do, how they ended up doing it, And it's interesting to see how many artists incorporated some Earth, Wind, and Fire into their stuff after this, after they started hitting, after people started getting more musical with their stuff, more instrumentation, more world sounds, more trying to reach outside of their general area. Like, I think that's something that they gave to R&B music. And I think they opened the doors, or at least cracked the doors open for some of the stuff we heard in the 80s. When you think about the way their shows were really big too, and it was that, them and P-Funk doing the huge shows. And it's like, okay, we got these big shows, we got these big budgets, we got this real instrumentation, we got a real band. How do we carry this into the 80s? And in some cases, the record company said, okay, we'll wrap all of that music together, but we won't do it with a band. We'll do it around one person. So that's how, in my mind, you end up with Michael Jackson being in the right place at the right time, along with his ridiculous talent. He ends up, they wanted him to work with Maurice White. Like, that was an idea. And Mike didn't have a major issue with that because Mike loved Earth, Wind, and Fire. But he ended up going with Quincy Jones. And Quincy Jones, of course, has his extensive jazz background and blues background. And he's like, okay. But now Earth, Wind, and Fire has been making hits for 4 or 5 years now. So you can come in and be ultra musical and get away with it. So I think that helped, right?
Set the groundwork as far as in Earth, Wind, and Fire. Their goal was, we want to make music for everybody. And like you were telling me earlier, that Michael Jackson, he was the same way. He was like, hey, I want to make music for everybody. This world thing, and make like this world sound where anyone around the world, the music will sound familiar to them in some kind of way. And I like how you were talking about, yeah, I love this band because it's not the same 5 guys, where that always trips me out, where it's like it's a group of friends and they're all like of different backgrounds, but they're the same 5 guys. And it's like, how'd you do that? Like, how did that happen? Or like, it'll be like a married couple and they look exactly alike. Like, how did that happen? So yeah, I like this, where this band, like, it's like, I can see, like, cause they, Verdi and White, he talked about, we were never in Jet magazine, and like they were like, oh, it was a big deal when we were on this or on that, because it was probably like, how do we market these guys? Like how do we sell? Like, cause so that lets you know they're just breaking, like they didn't just blur the lines, they destroyed it or erased it all together. Whereas like, yeah, you can't pigeonhole this, because as soon as you do, then we're going to turn left from this angle. So yeah, very interesting group, and driven, willing to listen to a vision. In the documentary, they showed so many details of that. But yeah, just so many members in the group. You would think, like, after a while, like, oh, maybe we don't need this, don't need that. But they are determined, we need all of this for the sound.
Right, and it lasted for so long. And then you think about their run happening with essentially disco happening at the same time. So mid 70s to early 80s, like they survived and thrived during that period of time where there was a lot of dance music. And you saw on the documentary, you saw Philip Bailey and them almost rolling their eyes at Boogie Wonderland. But in my mind as a kid and even as an adult, when I hear Boogie Wonderland, I didn't view that as like a sellout, right? Like, I viewed that as just, it's just another Earth, Wind, and Fire song. And again, because they could do whatever they want, however they want it. It was just one song where they wanted to hit a piece of that sound, but it's still very much a Earth, Wind, and Fire song.
1979 on the I Am
So
album.
I mean, the video is hilarious to me because these fools are hopping around. Because we talk about late 70s and early 80s videos all the time, where it's like these guys are just now making videos and they know everybody loves their show, so they just make a video that's kind of like them recording one of their shows. but it's super obvious that it's not a live show because obviously monetarily they wouldn't have been able to do that and make it work. So these dudes are in an empty room pretending they're doing a show, and it's like, oh, okay, this is wild. And they're looking like they're having the time of their lives, and it's like, okay, like this, like that video is just great. But all their videos are kind of that same way in that early period of time. So like to late 70s to early 80s. But even with Boogie Wonderland, like you think about the lyrics, midnight creeps so slowly into hearts of men who need more than they get. Daylight deals a bad hand to a woman who has laid too many bets. The mirror stares you in the face and says, baby, it won't work. You say your prayers though you don't care. You shake, you dance and shake the hurt. Wait, that's a lot of information. That's a lot of messages there, Maurice, in the Boogie Wonderland. You tell it. You didn't explain why people are boogieing because they're escaping. Like you can't even do that on the dance on the boogie song. The boogie is in the name of the song, and you're not letting people just boogie. You got to put a message into that too.
We've been on this motif. I was boogieing just a little bit too much, and I've been to some of these boogies and. They're passing around drugs and stuff like it's candy, hard candy.
And it's like, hey, man, I get why we're doing it, guys. And, yeah, that's good. You can dance, but you got to come back to this other thing. Like, you got to figure this out in addition to the boogie, and you got to figure it out in some other way. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I find romance when I start to dance in Boogie Wonderland. Okay. That's the sellout record there, right? You know, like. They got messages there too, but to come back to that's the way of the world, man, like again, this is a record that I heard so much as a kid. It was in the walls, it was in the car, taking road trips, taking little errand runs with my dad. He's riding around, it gets late. They start playing a little bit slower music. It comes in, this is coming on at some point. If it's not Love Holiday or Reasons, or like I'm hearing an Earth, Wind and Fire song before I come home as a kid, right? So, and you're just hearing it, right? And it's just there and you don't know really what's going on, but with adult ears, okay, it starts out pretty innocuous, right? Like Hearts of Fire creates love, desire, take you high and higher to the world you belong. Okay, sure. Hearts of Fire creates love, desire, higher and higher to your place on the throne. Okay, yeah, well, whatever, yeah, R&B, mid-70s, nothing too much crazy going on here. And then we get into the verse. We come together on this special day, sing a message loud and clear. Looking back, we've touched on sorrowful days. Future past, they disappear. And then you get to the bridge. You will find peace of mind if you look way down in your heart and soul. Don't hesitate because the world seems cold. Stay young at heart because you're never old at heart. What? Wait. What? Hey. If I was feeling a little bad, I hear that. I might feel a little bit better. You know?
And this music is ethereal. Like, you know, we're doing a podcast where we don't play the music. So, you know, we have the link in the show notes. You've heard this before. If not, you can stop this, pause it, play it, come back. But the music is ethereal. You sound like you're ascending. It's like it's uplifting, and then it's kind of melancholy too. Like it's a lot going on.
Yeah, it does have a melancholy tone. The chorus is handled by Philip Bailey, so you get the loud falsetto. Because his falsetto is kind of odd compared to some of the other ones that were around during that time, because it's kind of like a boisterous, loud falsetto. So like he's at max volume while in a falsetto, and he sings like that on like 80% of the songs that he's singing on. So it's like, man, how does your throat not hurt? How are you still making it through these songs? Like, how can you do this? So like Bailey I knew he was kind of crazy when I was a kid, but again, as an adult, you listen back to these songs and these are some insane vocal performances by him. And it's just him on the chorus this time. So the verses are handled by Maurice, and yeah, he's breaking it down. So, okay, now we're in the chorus. That's the way of the world. Plant your flower and you grow a pearl. Child is born with a heart of gold. Way of the world makes his heart so cold.
That's it right there. That's the whole thing. That is front and back, 1970 to 1979. That is the whole record right there. Wow. Yeah.
So you got these dudes speaking in almost like advice parables in the middle of this song, and it's just like, again, you're disarmed by the music because it is melancholy, but in general purpose, if you take the lyrics out, it sounds like a smooth, cool 70s band song. Like, you don't know what the guy's gonna say when that starts, and then they're laying it in there. They're kind of like putting a pill in the candy type of deal, and like this pill is in there. And they're trying to medicate you, and they're trying to heal you. They're trying to make you feel a certain way with the way this is produced and delivered. And the reassurance in Maurice's voice is just something that once it hits you what they're doing and you listen to it with those ears, like, it really just ignites these records. It lights these records up in a way that maybe as a kid you wouldn't totally notice. Like, you knew the stuff was jamming because, again, it was in the walls, it was everywhere. But even hearing it in my 20s, I gained an appreciation for them and I really loved it. But now, with real experience, with real heartache, with real earth living going on, hearing these records, knowing what Maurice was going through, having a general idea of what some of the other band members were going through, and for them to produce this type of record with the intention of pulling the world up to a better place, it's special stuff, man. It really is.
The reason why I added the melancholy to it, it just seems like something like Cooley High, one of the characters, they die and you're sad at the end. They play that music and the credits are rolling and make you feel kind of hopeful, but you're like, man, that put me in a depressed mood for the whole weekend. Now, I'm gonna put you on the spot with this. This might be a reach. Do you think up to this point, this 1975, there really has not been a record like this? Like, the sounds going on here, the mood, just the music. Could this have been like when people were hearing this? Of course, it's a big hit, but is it also because, like, whoa, I've heard some stuff like this, but not like this? Do you think that's why this record is so special? Maybe this is really unique, how it's presented.
Well, I think, like you talk about, that late 60s, early 70s, Black pride, you can be somebody, you can do what you want to do. You just got to believe you could do it, and then you got to go to it and be ready to deal with the days where everything doesn't go your way. Like, that was out there, right? Like, that type of music was there, and the melancholy sadness of, hey man, there's a war going on. Hey man, we've desegregated and things aren't really going right, but I'm gonna still kind of chop my wood and do my thing. Like, a lot, like, again, you had Curtis Mayfield, you had Marvin Gaye, you had Sly and the Family Stone. Like, you had a lot of artists that were in the process of kind of making those records here and there. Even the year after this, I believe you had the Isley Brothers making Harvest for the World. And they were talking about gather every man and gather every woman and celebrate your life and give thanks for your children. Like, it was out there, right? So it wasn't like this was out of nowhere. But again, I think the big thing for them is that it was a part of a lot of their music. It wasn't just, hey, we're going to make the Let's Act Right Together, y'all album, and then I'll be back singing about something else on the next album. It was like, no, this is the mantra for our group. And we're not just trying to get ourselves up. We're trying to get everybody else up in a specific way. So it was the universe was ripe for the picking for a group to show up with this. But it's just like the essence of how it was delivered is what got people. Because I don't think it was brand new, caught everybody off guard. I think it was more of it had to happen during the time that it happened. Because when they showed up a little bit earlier, a couple years before, I mean, they had Devotion, and we know that song because it's in the walls too. You know, True Devotion, Bless the Children, and Deliver from the Fruits of Evil. Like, it's all like the optimism was there too then, but that stuff didn't hit in the same way. Now, they did have Reasons before that was kind of like a sneaky, huge record that people realized was a lot bigger when they made the live version a couple years later. But the live version didn't come out until after they started having these hits with That's the Way of the World and Shining Star. So I think they captured a moment. It was kind of this lightning in a bottle thing, and they were doing the right thing at the right time in the right way with the right mix of like, man, we kind of want this. Maybe we didn't want this 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe we didn't even want it 2 years ago, but we want it now. And you're still doing this. We'll take it. And we really will take it. We will make this a thing. Like, we're going to make you have hits. And they were in a position where it was like, hey, if we're going to have hits doing this, this is what we want to do. So now let's expand and keep doing it. And they were able to keep that going for a really long time with the same type of concept.
Child is born with a heart of gold, way of the world makes his heart so cold. Man. Wow. Like, just think just in a small little couplet there. A child is born with a heart of gold. Like, oh, wow, that's positive connotation. And then just a line later, the way of the world gonna plant your flower makes his heart so cold. Like, just experiences and dealing with life. Wow.
Yeah,
Woo.
man. And so it's like you're saying this in the bridge and the chorus, but your first and second verse is like, hey, look, man, even with all that going on, I'm showing up and telling you that I'm showing up to sing a message to you loud and clear that you'll find a peace of mind if you look way down in your heart and soul. And I know it's a bunch of bad stuff going on, but don't hesitate because the world seems cold. Stay young at heart because you're never old at heart. Like, you could be old in a lot of ways, but not of heart. Keep your heart there. Keep your heart in a childlike state. Like, love yourself. Love the pieces of the world that you can find to love and go with that. And it's like, okay, again, hearing that with, 40 plus year old ears is like, yeah, that takes some work to do. But if you can decide to make yourself do it, you're going to feel pretty good about yourself more days often than not. So that optimism, that, again, I call it the defiant optimism, because as a child, sometimes it's easy to be optimistic because you don't know the bad news, right? Like, you don't know all the different things that can and may go wrong. But this is like challenging everybody to say, hey, I'm not just talking to the children. I'm talking to everybody. Like, the world is dependent on you to, make things as good as they can be, right?
And this makes sense with Maurice White, with him studying meditation, mysticism, just all of that, and just channeling that and putting it in the music. The message.
Yep. I mean, you think about the All About Love song, which is, on the same album, which I love. And it's like, hey, man, paint a pretty smile each day. Love is a blessing. Never let it fade away. It's all about love. Build yourself a true romance. Beauty that surrounds you. You deserve just one more chance, my dear. My dear. Let your light shine all through your mind. Feel a little heart aglow. Take the time, make up your mind, because it's all about love.
And they talked about AM, FM. Now in the 70s, you're having the FM format where they were able to play the longer records. So yeah, you got a lot going on, just all this bandwidth and this space for, you know what, I think, and also you got to remember, some of the music, it's for, hey man, we got a party going on, I put the record on, we can all just jam. But with during this time, we don't have the Walkman yet. You're going to be kind of sitting still and listening. So you're going to be hearing this stuff. You're going to be taking this in. And I believe people were picking up on the messages. And that's why this band is evergreen, where it is Earth, Wind, and Fire forever. Residencies in Las Vegas, kids of younger generations knowing who they are. It's some forever stuff.
Yep, and they deserve it, man, because they hit. And again, like you say, it's so fortunate that they were able to hit, right? And hit at the right time and be smart enough to keep it going. Even when Charles Stepney passed after this first hit album, they were able to keep it going for several albums and several hits after that. They made a live album. They made a greatest hits. They produced for other people. We talked about that. I mean, it made it into the documentary too, but like the stuff they did with the emotions, I mean, that's some supreme vocal slaying going on those songs. And I mean, and again, it's in the walls. It's been needle dropped in different shows and stuff, like, but the emotions, Best of My Love, like that song is crazy. Like that song is special.
The production.
Yes. It's clean. That bass is hard. That percussion is going. And it's wild to think it's like Philip Bailey and Maurice White are two glorious vocalists. And some kind of way, when the emotions got a hold of that material, they really carried it forward. Because when you hear it now, it sounds like Earth, Wind, and Fire songs with somebody else singing. So that's a lot of pressure to deliver in that situation, and they must have felt it because they killed it. And now when you bring it up, people
as
love
a kid,
that
you
song.
would have thought that was the national anthem.
Oh my God, yeah,
yeah. You would have thought that was the national anthem because I mean, you heard that everywhere,
in the walls,
all the time,
everywhere. And just the way it's delivered, once you hear enough Earth, Wind, and Fire, you throw that in there, right in there with it, and it makes perfect sense. And then the way, even if you listen to the lyrics, he's sneaking some stuff in on that one too, because Maurice can't help himself. Like that defiant optimism has got to be there. So it really colors him as a writer and the type of things he was able to get in. And it wasn't just him, it was the rest of the group penning things as well, because again, another group with 9 people in the 70s where the record keeping isn't amazing. Right? And you get a lead singer that's like, I wrote these songs, yeah, and I'm taking the publishing for these songs. And the other dudes are just in a band trying to do their part, and the band leader is like, oh yeah, I appreciate y'all, but yeah, I was at the studio a few hours before and after y'all, so to pay myself back, I'm going to write myself in as the sole writer on these songs.
Ooh.
Or in some cases, you get one guy saying, well, I helped write a song. So now it's 9 guys in a group, and it's 2 or 3 people being listed as writers. And then once you get the different advisors and the different people involved on the different records, when they're trying to elevate and keep things going, like, it's very interesting to see how those dynamics played into their music, 5 years later. Because, I mean, eventually they worked with David Foster, And David Foster, I mean, if you know, that's a name. That's a guy that's got some jams under his belt for sure.
It's amazing that they were able to keep all this together for so long, and then we bump into the 1980s.
Yeah, and the first couple albums during that period of time, if you go look, I mean, they had hits. And again, because they were videos getting made and they were a big act, so they made videos, but they're still over here dressed like Elvis in Vegas, jumping around, and it's like, ooh, do they know they're not supposed to be doing this? Like, as a kid, I didn't care. I was just like, this is Earth, Wind & Fire. I know they're people's voice. I see, for whatever reason, Philip Bailey still has on a headband, whatever. I don't know, Maurice White. Like, it's fine, but it's like it's about to be over and they don't know it, you know?
Right, but when you look at the scope of it, you really look back, how different was it? You know what I'm talking about? Like, the 80s, so much like weird stuff going on anyway. But the reason why I bring up the 80s thing is because, like, you know, full disclosure, we're 40 episodes in. You'll kind of notice there's a lot of things I'll like, hey, we should do this record. I kind of avoid the 80s. Because really the only thing I like about the 80s is rap music, cartoons, and Michael J. Fox. So the fact that it was like, you know, they talked about this in the documentary, like, yeah, man, some of those 80s records. I'm like, I don't blame Earth, Wind & Fire. I blame the sensibilities of the 1980s. I'm kind of doing a bit and I'm joking, but not really.
Man, we should almost take a whole episode about that. Maybe we could talk ourselves into that, because I do think the 80s, if you zoom out too far, you can tell yourself a story that people were not making jam and stuff in the 80s. But I think what was happening was a weird transition. And so you have a lot of groups from, especially in the early 80s, that made one or two jamming songs or albums, and then they break up and fall off the face of the earth. And they were on record labels that are now not functional. And so then those albums go out of print. And then that means those records don't get a second life unless some rapper samples it in a super obvious way and it gets another life that way. Or somebody needle drops it in the middle of a really popular show. And so it's just kind of that odd gap and that odd transition, right? Because if you think early 80s, you're going from, Earth, Wind & Fire, big bands, Ohio Players, P-Funk, I mean, at a smaller level, LTD, and then also the doo-wop groups, kind of what I call them, like the vocal groups. So Temptations, OJs, those folks. Like, those folks are disbanding and doing solo albums and changing lead singers and all that stuff. And then you started catching these front men who the band was almost more obviously in the background. So whether it be Prince and the Revolution, whether it be Michael Jackson and the whole menagerie of people he had, whether it be Rick James, that's also early 80s. Like, there's a lot of really good musicianship happening in the early 80s. Things get weird more in the mid 80s because you start having less bands and you start getting more programmed drums. Or even if you take a person like Stevie Wonder, you see a big shift in his music in the mid 80s because he stops doing his own drumming and he starts trying to program drums. And it's a completely different story. But, you know, we can zoom into that some other time. And that's just in the R&B space. Obviously, in the rock space, in the pop space, the MTV universe, I think we were led astray, right? I think it's hard for us to believe that because we saw it with our own eyes, literally. We were the first kids to really see a lot of visual media to go with the music, right? Like videos. But the stuff similar to now, right? Like the stuff that has the highest streams might not be the stuff that you listen to in the background that's really jamming, that's really kicking people into another gear, influencing people. There's all this other stuff that may have not had room. Because even though we had MTV, remember we talked about this on a different episode where BET wasn't on all day, right? Depending on what cable you had, BET came on at like 6 o'clock and went off at 11. Like there wasn't a lot of videos getting played, but there was a lot of videos getting made that most of us didn't see until later on. So yeah, I'd love to spend some time unpacking that with you, because I that's my the too long didn't read is that there's a lot of jamming stuff in the 80s. You needed a tour guide, and luckily in my case I had tour guides. Not even so much when I was little, even though I did have a lot of music going on when I was little, but when I was in my low 20s, so you're talking early 2000s, and all the way up into the 2010s, I had tour guides. I had people who were 5-10 years older than us, so they know, right? Like their club music, their dance music, their music that they listen to in the car, like a lot of that stuff existed kind of in a vacuum for us when we were little kids, because we weren't driving, we weren't at the club, we weren't going out, and so we just didn't have access to that music, like the boogie down jamming music in between the 70s, which I think we all understand, and the 90s, which we also all understand. But that 80s, there's a lot of stuff happening in there, especially in the R&B space, for sure. So we can hit that some other time.
Yeah, because and now retroactively, I do appreciate this stuff. But I think as a kid, I don't think I was thinking I don't like this stuff. But I just noticed, bam, we get into another decade, and I start seeing more colors. I start going like, okay, just like production wise. Like I remember with on Saturday Night Live where Eddie Murphy is playing Stevie Wonder, and he's at the piano. He's singing Ebony and Ivory, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. And then I found out like, oh, that's a real song and all this stuff. And when I heard the song, like the actual record, I was like, what is this? Because it was doing a bunch of computer technology, drumming, and like doing all this kind of weird 80s quirky stuff. I can't. But now here's something. So a couple of episodes ago, this is episode 40. On episode 38, we do Solange, and we talked about Cranes in the Sky, and, just the mundaneness of suburbia, or here I'm at the top, now what? It's just the void. How can I fill it? I've tried filling it with all these vices, and it's just the chasm still there. And then the episode 39, we do the Smashing Pumpkins Zero, where it's kind of dealing with that same stuff. Like, hey, they anointed me king. I'm on top, and I had some fun, but the decadence and my cup is spilling over. This is just a little bit too much. Like, what's going on? And then I saw The Magnificent Others. That's a podcast that Billy Corgan does on YouTube, and he was interviewing Mr. White, Verdine White, bass player of Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Billy Corgan. He was telling him like, hey, my dad, you try to get in the music business, and he was mostly like blues and soul music, and that's all he would play. And he was saying like with you guys, like he was really stressing, whoa, what they're doing here, like this is it. This is the pinnacle. This is what we're all trying to reach for. And he just said that, like, music I was into, my dad wasn't really into that, but he was really stressing, like, if you need to listen to anything, you need to listen to this, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And Billy Corgan, he talked about how he was telling his kids, hey, I'm going to interview this guy, this Verdine White, he's of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they're like, oh, no, we know him. He's like, how you know him? And he's like, oh, Mom plays in the car. So Billy Corgan was like, wait a minute, my wife likes Earth, Wind, and Fire? So it's, ubiquitous, in the walls. It is, I've said this before. It is Earth, Wind, and Fire forever. Like, I'm telling you, in September, like, you think November 1st, people are playing the All I Want Is Christmas Is You? Boom, September, you're hearing the 19th or whatever it is, you're hearing Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah.
You're hearing all this music. This is an anthem. This is, this is national anthem stuff. Like, Earth, Wind, and Fire, they're really doing some national anthem stuff. This record that we're talking about, Way of the World, this is some national anthem stuff. And I picked up on, like, whoa, wait a minute. Because I sent sent it to you, Lenny Kravitz doing the "It Ain't Over Till It's Over." I was like, wait a minute, this is Way of the World.
Yeah.
But it's like, why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you be influenced by Earth, Wind, and Fire?
Yeah, I mean, it was 15 years later. It's there, man.
You got a new crop of 8 to 23-year-olds, and it's like, well, maybe they never heard it, or they've heard it, but I'm gonna put a different spin on it. So that's what's always going on. But you got a new crop of 8 to 13-year-olds every 3 years, and boom, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they talked about that, like, hey, in the 90s, we started getting this resurgence because people started appreciating us. Rappers, they're name dropping us. They're asking us for samples, make appearances. We're appearing on TV shows. So now it's like, yeah, you cannot imagine and they're performing. They're outside, Arthur.
Yes, they are. They are very much outside. I mean, Maurice got sick and couldn't perform as often. But he was still a member of the band once they got back together and was doing a lot of the background work. And they made albums in the 90s and early 2000s, and some of them got some really good jams on there, still in there. But, obviously by that time they weren't going to have the same level of hits, but they got some songs that really go during that period of time. But then, about 10 years ago, Maurice passed away, and they just keep it going. And then you find out that Philip Bailey can also sing Maurice's parts too. And it's like, oh, okay. I didn't know you had that. That's crazy.
Range, gentlemen. Range.
Talent and range, man.
Yeah, I have a friend that goes to Vegas. I don't know if it's every year, but she's bringing up Earth, Wind, and Fire and like seeing them, I feel like, every year.
Hey, I could believe it. They probably still do a really good show. I mean, the footage that you see from the 70s and 80s, again, they're out there, again, looking like Elvis, and they're jumping around, and there's a lot of movement, and it's a really lot going on, especially for that period of time, but the vocal performances are out of this world, and the playing, the band itself, like, it's a 9-man team, and everybody's doing their thing, man. Everybody's getting a piece. The guitar playing is crazy. The drumming is good. The keys are money, and everything is just driving and jamming and going, man. So they had their front men, and they have the guys where you can see them and know them, and again, if you got a weird afro or too much hair or a headband, like, it's probably a little bit easier to identify. But the band was a band. Those guys were hitting it, man.
A wall of sound.
Yes.
You're getting your money's worth. And what I like about these guys, what I like about the mission of what they were doing is, okay, we want to make music for you. And hey, you guys like disco? We'll give you a disco record. But like, we want to perform live. We want to give you a performance. We're going to have the choreographer of The Wiz help us with some stuff. We're going to do some magic. Not quite close-up magic, but we're going to do some illusionists. Guys, this is the band. I mean, and they were called in that movie The Group. I think that's hardcore. But anyway, they were in a movie, Way of the World, Harvey Keitel's first film, and in the group they play in the movie they're called The Group.
Yeah, that's funny.
I think that's funny. I think that's awesome though. But wow, oh gosh, I know. Yeah, September I'll be playing some Earth, Wind, and Fire, but I'm definitely going to be playing it in October when we start seeing those first football games. I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I'm going to be playing some Earth, Wind, and Fire, man. I can, again, we don't play the music on the podcast, but guys, please believe that throughout this whole episode, that music is just going on in my head.
Oh my goodness.
How could it not?
Yes. I mean, I wish I had a better falsetto, man. 'Cause I would just hit it. I would hit it one good time, man.
It's hard not to do it. Like, when we were doing Computer Love, we were able to punch that in. But yeah, I'm thinking about this song Way of the World.
Yeah, man, it's a really good one. I think it's a good one for our 40th episode. I think we've had a lot of jams. I think we talk about showing a lot of restraint and not taking like our 5 favorite artists and making every song be one of theirs. But you know, it's crazy to think we could be 40 songs deep before we get to Earth, Wind, and Fire. And there's so many people that I want to get to musically. So hopefully we keep the jams flowing. And yeah, hopefully we're inspiring people to go open up an app somewhere and play some of these songs, man. Because yeah, Earth, Wind, and Fire, we can describe it as well as we want, but nothing can replace getting it into your ears and catching what's going on with it, because it all works. It doesn't seem like it should, but it does, and it's great.
And something I can't get my mind around is that we didn't bring this up. In the decade of the 1970s, guys, they were releasing an album a year.
Yeah.
And this is a band where like it's not like it's just me and the DJ. I'm not slighting just me and the DJ, but I'm just saying like they're not cutting corners. They're not like there's no shortcuts. How is this even possible? And they're touring. Like they're not chilling. An album a year.
Yeah, even before they hit, right? Doing an album a year. They did 2 albums in 71. But yeah, man, that's an album a year. They had a greatest hits. They also had a live album with new songs on it. I always bring up the with new songs part on it because that's a big deal.
They showed a music video. It was in the 1980s, and Maurice. It was kind of like this kind of this post-apocalyptic future. I don't know. It was kind of like it was an urban Mad Max, and I just looked at it and I got angry. Because again, I'm just hating on the 80s. I don't know.
Music videos, man. Music videos. And I'm telling you, that's why I bring up the whole weird hair. They got they have on the mid-70s get-ups, and it's like the early 80s. And they're doing it because it was working 5 years ago. And it's like, okay.
I don't blame them.
Prince is out here in lace. Michael Jackson's doing weird stuff. And they're like, okay, we're 10, 15 years older than these dudes. How do we compete?
It looked like he turned the corner and he walked in RoboCop 2, and I got angry. But no, it is unbelievable. Like, guys, I mean, and we're stuck in this time period, but it's like you do 2 albums and like you're done. You turn 29, you're done. They're steady going and going. Someone is, footing the bill for the tours, the album productions, and man, just staying relevant. So think about it. Maurice, he was a jazz drummer in the 60s. So, I mean, pretty much just staying relevant for decades. And Earth, Wind, and Fire as a collective, as a brand, they have been in our lives the whole time.
Yes, they have, man. I mean, because again, you think, so by the time he's talking about Let's Groove Tonight, he's 40.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, he's already 40. And I'm not saying 40 to be weird. Like, no, he's 40. He's born in 41. So it's like, hey, man, like, he was a little bit older than those guys he was around. So again, that was a good reason why people were looking up to Earth, Wind, and Fire. When they hit, they were like, man, what are these dudes doing? Let's try to get in on that.
Down.
Boogie. That video is amazing because they had to clone it.
Hey, that video is great
because they had the clone. They had the Maurice White. They had triple Maurice White. It was amazing.
I love it.
And they had the one little coordinated dance move, and they're in that little tunnel doing it over and over. And they're like, "This is great." Like this is them trying to be cool, and this is like as good as they can do, and they made it.
But again, and the productions, like you got Yeah, you got Barbara Streisand going like, "Hey, can you help me produce something? How you do that?"
Yeah. And it's like
Wow.
just the thing that we probably haven't touched on, and that's impressive in all this time, is the way their stuff hit. A big part of it is because they have these chants in these easily
Yes.
recognizable, like they're getting the messages in there. It's heavy stuff in the verses, but when they go to a chorus or a hook, it's a chorus and it's gonna hook you and it's catchy, and that's musical talent. Like we got somewhere in the 90s, like we talk about people getting too cool to make stuff that sounds good on purpose and to make stuff that's catchy on purpose. But are you too cool, or is it just that maybe you're not talented enough to do that musically, to make it all go, to get the keys right? And again, they got two great vocalists. Who sings which part and why? And how do you make it work? And they're just doing it like repeatedly over and over and over again. So just a bang up band. I mean, that's understatement of the century. Like they're just, their stuff is so great. It's been studied. People trying to figure out how they got everything to mix the right way without sounding too busy. You got the simple vocal chants, but you got the heavy lyrical content, getting the messages out there. And again, it's a weird mix. You got a baritone and a falsetto being mixed together to try to cover all the vocal bases that you need. And they do it, and it works. And you almost couldn't imagine them doing it any other way than the way they did it on these songs.
Final thoughts, Arthur.
Man, it's Earth, Wind, and Fire, man. It's the Elements. I remember in the early 2000s, as I was listening to their catalog, that was right around the time they were making albums again. And you knew enough to know that Maurice was sick, but he was still capable of recording music if you gave him enough time to rest. And he may not do the live shows, but they were going to make an album, and they were already kind of getting their flowers. And BET was just big enough to start having their own award shows, because, you know, this historic issue of complaints about black artists not getting the award recognition that they deserve or whatever. And BET being like, okay, well, we got it. We can just make a BET award, y'all. Black People Awards. And they got a Lifetime Achievement Award in the early 2000s. And it's so great, dude, because Maurice was still there. And the guy they got to show them out just happened to be Steve Harvey.
Go ahead. They deserve all that. All that. Now listen to me. The only way that you can get a Lifetime Achievement Award is that you got to have been doing this thing that we do at the highest level for a lot of years in a row. Not just a week. You can't have a CD and get no Lifetime Achievement. You can't have 2 CDs. You can't go platinum and get this. To get a Lifetime Achievement, you got to have something that was out on 8-track. This what I'm saying. Y'all make your albums, y'all got nice hits, but if it wasn't no 8-track, you can't get no Lifetime Achievement because you too new. These here dudes is not new. And the other way, see, there's certain qualifications you got to go through to get a Lifetime Achievement Award. First of all, your music has to have stood the test of time. That's number one. Your hit got to make a lot of sense every time they hit, year after year after year. And what second way is, as soon as the first note of your song is played, everybody in there got to go, oh, hell no. Y'all, I know they didn't just play that right there. If your music don't do that, you can't get no Lifetime Achievement Award. Hear me tonight. I'm bringing these boys out the right way. Now I'm going to tell you something else. The other qualification is, when you hear the music, It has to remind you of a special place and a special time. When you hear it, your mind got to click over, pack into something, and it make you look off. If yours don't do that, you can't get no lifetime achievement. This is all I'm trying to tell y'all. Now, few artists or groups can say that. So that's why tonight we are honoring one of the greatest bands of all time, Earth, Wind, and Fire. We got some more.
And so if you know Steve Harvey, like he's fussing at the crowd, explaining to them why and how Earth, Wind, and Fire deserves this a Lifetime Achievement Award. You can't just get it with one good album. You can't just get it with two good albums or one hit song. Like the type of stuff they done made and stayed with you. You still listening to it now. It's been all them years later. And like this is like these people are a movement and they deserve every piece of love that you could possibly give them. And like he did a whole big, long, aggressive thing about it. And which was funny because he had done the same thing during the Kings of Comedy stand-up where he had talked about Earth, Wind, and Fire and some other groups. So it's really cool to think like these guys have almost been on a soak up the love, collect your flowers tour for like 20 years now, at least.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. Guys, go find a Earth, Wind, and Fire playlist. Do it. It's worth it. It's worth doing the discography run. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Let us know. Write to us at ontherecordjams@gmail.com if you've ever seen Earth, Wind, and Fire live. Tell us, what's your favorite Earth, Wind, and Fire song or album. Do you have any recommendations of any live performances that we could probably catch on YouTube? Like, oh man, when they play St. Louis, this is totally worth it. Let us know. Write to us at ontherecordjams@gmail.com. Where's some other places they can reach us, Arthur?
All right. We got OTRJ on Blue Sky. We got On The Record Jams on X. We're also on Facebook on The Records. If you go into YouTube or Amazon or anywhere where we're posted at, you can hit those comment fields up. Like there's a lot of places to find us at to keep these conversations going.
Yeah, and help us out, guys. If you can go to whatever podcatcher you're on, if they have ratings, if you could rate and review us so we can find those other music lovers out there. And if you're outside the United States and you write a review and rate us, email us at ontherecordjams@gmail.com just so I'll know to go get that alert. So until next time, keep your lamplight trimmed and burning.
And keep on jamming.